Welcome back to A Slice of News, where I cut you off a slice of news. Because of Chinese interference in the 2020 elections, a state of emergency must be declared, and the president must be given increased power over the elections through an executive order. That is the claim by a group of pro-Trump supporters and attorneys who produced a 17-page draft order, which reportedly has been reviewed by the president. This proposed executive order would grant President Trump the ability to mandate the use of voter ID in hand-counted ballots and ban mail-in ballots in anticipation of the upcoming midterm elections. They're effectively saying, we think we're going to lose really badly in these elections, and that's a national emergency to us, so we have to make sure that doesn't happen. They seem to feel the only way to ensure true election integrity is to remove voting machines, to remove mail-in ballots. The only thing that counts is hand-counted, in-person voting, seemingly still clinging to the belief that those darn voting machines turned all those Trump votes into Biden votes in 2020 and stole the election from him, though also leaving unexplained how, if the voting machines are all compromised, how they seem to have given him the presidency in the subsequent election. I guess voting machines and mail-in ballots are okay when they give them the result they want. They're only compromised when they don't elect the guy they want to get elected. It's a bit interesting how the narrative on the right is, if we win, the elections are perfectly fine and normal. But if the Democrats win, it's foreign interference, it's fraud, it's suspect. I think if these people were truly passionate and convinced that there was vote machine based interference in an election, there are irregularities to be found, but not in the 2020 election and not against their favorite president. But they aren't really, and they won't, because it's not about election integrity. It's about Republicans not losing elections, even when they should. If we win, it's fine. If we lose, it's rigged. But these are people that are allergic to facts. An assessment by U.S. intelligence found that there was no evidence of any altered election results in 2020 by a foreign actor. The 2020 elections were not rigged. Donald Trump just lost. And losing is something Republicans simply are unable to do gracefully, to a point that even though they acknowledge that the Constitution gives the power over elections to state legislators and not to the federal government, and certainly not to the president in particular, they feel that maybe he should have it anyway because it's a national election emergency, which is a really concerning path to be even teasing about going towards. While they absolutely could not have predicted just how national politics would be in the modern era, the framers of the Constitution were very aware about the importance of separating the powers when it came to stuff like elections and not consolidating too much of it in the executive branch. And trying to circumvent that through an invented national vote emergency is a really bad look and sets a very dangerous precedent. I'd say, what are they going to do if something like this passed when a Democrat is in power? But I guess the idea is, if this proposed executive order were to go into effect, a Democrat would never return to power and Republicans would rule the country indefinitely. Or at least that's what they would like to happen. It's actually almost comical, the amount of hoops and mental gymnastics they go through to justify not winning an election they really wanted to. Former White House advisor and guy who looks like that potato that you forgot at the back of your pantry, Steve Bannon, insists that there's no doubt that the Chinese Communist Party took an active role in removing President Trump from office, despite the fact, of course, it has been conclusively established that there was no foreign interference in the 2020 election. And if somehow Communist China colluded to keep Donald Trump from winning the 2020 election against Joe Biden, why would they stop there? Why would they allow him to win in 2024? I feel like I keep going back to that same point, but these claims of election interference just don't make sense. They're somehow only effective when they lose, but otherwise their efforts fail when Donald Trump succeeds and wins. It seems to me that they feel like they can't win an election without cheating, so the other team must also be cheating to win, because that's what they would do. So the national vote emergency that they think the president should invoke so he can seize the means of voting is really a fear that Democrats are going to run the playbook that they would run if they were the ones in their position. It never seems to enter into their head that Democrats don't need a foreign government to alter votes in their favor or perpetrate some sort of massive voter fraud to win. All they need to be is the better choice, and for many Americans, that's exactly what they are. Republicans are looking at a massive loss in November, not because Democrats are going to alter votes and cheat. It's because the American people are tired of the corrupt, incompetent Republican leadership and want to get rid of them. Understandably, once the news of this massive presidential overreach in the form of an executive order reached the Democratic leadership, they were not fans of it. In a statement put out by House Administration Ranking Member Joe Morrell and House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, Donald Trump has repeatedly said he wants to nationalize our elections because he intends to steal them. We reject the legality of any executive order based on debunked claims of Chinese interference in the 2020 elections. Democrats will not allow Donald Trump to take over this election, and neither will the American people. In a recent social media post, California Representative Ted Lieu said there's no national emergency exception to Article 1, Section 4 of the Constitution. States regulate elections unless Congress passes law. He went on to say, courts will slap Trump down just like they did with his illegal tariffs. And he is absolutely right. This sort of thing just would not stand. It seemed a little hyperbolic to say this is dictator stuff, but really is exactly that. It's effectively saying elections where the party that I want to win don't win are illegitimate and need to be stopped from even happening. So let's give all the power over our nation's elections to our leader. They love to say that the left is un-American, but that right there is incredibly un-American and not how we do things here, and it will never be how we do things here. We have a president, not an overlord, and no matter how much he or his party wishes that he had absolute power and could control every aspect of this country, he does not and never will. Inventing a national crisis as a pretext to seize even more power away from the states and away from the American people is wrong. Not only because it's of course built on an entirely false premise, but consolidation of all the power into one supreme leader is exactly what this country was founded to get away from. We're getting to a point where the foundational documents and the foundational ideals of this country are being completely ignored when they start being an impediment to the maintaining of Republicans' authority and power over the country. And what's possibly even more disturbing is just how much of the American populace is 100% okay with that. They've been so brainwashed, so manipulated, that to them authoritarianism and abandoning so many of our American values and ideals is preferable than allowing Democrats to lead this country and to make policy. They would rather allow the rise of American fascism than acknowledge the unpopularity and incompatibility with the modern world around us that their conservative ideas and values have. As long as they get what they want, the cost doesn't matter. And what's worse, they don't realize that oftentimes the ones who are going to be the most hurt by continued Republican control are them. The administration and the Republican Party as a whole could not be more clear just how little they care about their own voters and their well-being. The only ones they care about are the ultra-wealthy and corporations. These are people who would cheer for the boot that is stepping on their head and thanking it as it presses down harder. They say they love America and democracy, but this proposed executive order is incredibly undemocratic. It's obvious voter suppression, but either they cannot see it or they do not care, because they think that as long as Democrats are being kept out of office, it doesn't matter. But you would think they would have learned by now that when they cheer for the stripping of rights of others, it is inevitable that eventually it is their rights that will be stripped away. And when they are, there will be no one left to help them or to get those rights returned to them. They are the trees that cheer for the axe because it's convinced them that its wood handle makes him one of them. The reality is this is a proposal for an executive order that's likely never going to go through in the first place, but it's the fact that it's being proposed at all that's incredibly troubling all on its own. Giving the president control over the nation's elections and allowing him to dictate which ways the voters are even allowed to cast their vote isn't something we should want. Not only because it takes autonomy away from the states, but once the president has that sort of absolute power, it isn't difficult to foresee a future where they decide maybe people don't have to vote at all. and now that I'm the leader, I should just stay this way forever. I would say that sounds far-fetched, but we've already seen so many things happen that in a past time they would say were way too unbelievable and could never happen. So it's become increasingly hard to judge what is genuinely off the table entirely. Ultimately, I think all these endeavors and proposals and fear-mongering will amount to nothing. Democrats are going to win majorly in November. The shift of power is going to occur. And conservatives are going to have to start to learn how to live in the real world instead of just the imagined one where their ideas are popular and they only lose elections because the other people cheat, not because they were the worst option. And most Americans are just tired of them. Positive change is coming, whether they like it or not. Of that, you can be sure. Alright guys, that'll be it for this episode of A Slice of News. I've been your host, Mr. Slice, and until next time when I cut you off another slice of news. And don't forget to rate and review the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and wherever you find it.